You know that moment when someone asks you, "So, what would you do if you just didn't have to work anymore?" And instead of getting excited about the possibilities, your brain immediately goes to, "Yeah, that's never happening for me." You laugh it off, change the subject, maybe feel a little hollow inside for the next 10 minutes. That's not a motivation problem. That's not a discipline problem. That's a roadmap problem. Because here's the thing, most people have been sold one version of financial independence. The version where you grind for 30 or 40 years, hope your 401k doesn't implode right before you retire, and then maybe you get to stop working at 65. And look, if that's your plan, I'm not here to tear it down completely. But I am here to tell you that there are four distinct layers to financial independence, and almost nobody is talking about them in a way that actually makes sense for normal people. I've spent years obsessing over the psychology of money, the math behind wealth building, and why so many intelligent, hardworking people stay financially stuck while others seem to break free almost effortlessly. Now, let's talk about those four layers, because once you see them, you cannot unsee them. And more importantly, once you understand where you currently are, you'll know exactly what your next move should be. Before we get into the layers themselves, I need to address something that's probably floating around in your head right now. When most people hear the phrase financial independence, they picture one of two things: either a retired couple on a beach somewhere sipping cocktails at 11 in the morning, or some 28-year-old tech bro who sold a startup and never has to think about money again. And because neither of those images looks like your life, your brain quietly files financial independence under "not for people like me." Here's what most people don't realize. Financial independence isn't a single destination. It's a spectrum. It's a series of progressively powerful thresholds, each one giving you more freedom, more options, and more control over your own time. And the first layer, it's more achievable than you think. Probably a lot sooner than you think, too. A 2023 study from the Financial Health Network found that only 31% of Americans are considered financially healthy, meaning they're spending, saving, borrowing, and planning in ways that give them genuine options. That means roughly 7 out of every 10 people you know are operating without a real financial safety net, including, statistically speaking, people who make well over six figures. Because income alone doesn't build financial independence. Understanding the layers does. Layer 1. Financial stability. The foundation. Nobody respects. Let's start at the beginning, and I mean the real beginning. The first layer of financial independence is what I call financial stability. And I know, that sounds boring. It sounds like something your parents told you to do before you actually understood why it mattered. But stay with me, because this layer is where most people are quietly failing without even realizing it. Financial stability means one specific thing. Your monthly income reliably exceeds your monthly expenses, and you have a buffer of at least 1 to 3 months of living costs sitting somewhere you can actually access it. That's it. That's layer 1. Now you might be thinking, "Darren, that's not financial independence. That's just not being broke." And you're right. But here's the thing most financial educators skip right over. You cannot build genuine wealth from a position of instability. It is mathematically and psychologically impossible. Think about it like trying to fill a bathtub with the drain wide open. You can pour water in all day long, but if the drain is running, unexpected car repairs, medical bills, a slow month at work, you never actually accumulate anything. You're just managing the flow. Here's a number that should stop you cold. According to the Federal Reserve's 2023 report on the economic well-being of U.S. households, 37% of Americans couldn't cover an unexpected $400 expense without borrowing money or selling something. $400. That's a car repair. That's a dental visit. That's a laptop dying right before a work deadline. And more than a third of the country is one of those moments away from financial chaos. So what does reaching layer 1 actually look like in the math? Let's say your monthly expenses, rent, food, transportation, utilities, everything, run about $3,500 a month. Layer 1 means you need somewhere between $3,500 and $10,500 sitting in a liquid, accessible account. That's your stability buffer. And once it's there, something remarkable happens in your brain. Psychologists call it the shift from a scarcity mindset to what researchers at Princeton describe as cognitive bandwidth recovery. When you're financially unstable, your brain is running a constant background program called "What if something goes wrong?" That program consumes processing power. It makes you worse at decisions, worse at negotiations, worse at seeing opportunities. The moment you stabilize, even just modestly, like that background program quiets down. And suddenly you're thinking more clearly about everything, not just money. Layer 1 isn't glamorous, but it is the foundation that every single other layer is built on. Don't skip it. Don't rush past it. Respect it. Layer 2, financial security, where the game actually changes. Okay, so you've got your stability buffer. Your income reliably covers your expenses with a little left over. Now what? This is where layer 2 comes in, and this is where things start getting really interesting. Financial security is the point where your essential living expenses, not your entire lifestyle, just the non-negotiables, could theoretically be covered by passive income or investment returns indefinitely. We're talking rent or mortgage, groceries, utilities, basic transportation, and healthcare. The stuff you genuinely need to survive at a reasonable standard. Now here's the math that changes everything. Let's say your essential monthly expenses are $2,500 a month. That's $30,000 per year of must-cover costs. Using the widely accepted 4% safe withdrawal rule, which comes from the famous Trinity study out of Trinity University, you would need an investment portfolio of $750,000 to cover those costs indefinitely through investment returns alone. $750,000. That sounds like a lot, and it is. But here's what most people don't realize. You don't need to hit layer 2 all at once. Every dollar you invest is moving you incrementally closer to that threshold. If you've got $200,000 invested right now, your investments are already covering $8,000 of your annual essential expenses. That's 2.5 months of survival on autopilot. That matters. And here's the psychological dimension that nobody talks about. When you reach layer 2, something fundamentally changes about your relationship with risk. Suddenly, leaving a job that's killing you isn't terrifying. It's calculable. You can look at the numbers and know exactly how long your investments can sustain you while you figure out the next chapter. That's not recklessness. That's informed courage. Think about it like having a financial parachute. You might never need to pull the cord, but knowing it's strapped to your back changes how willing you are to take the leap on something that could genuinely change your life. Layer 3, financial flexibility, the layer that buys back your time. Here's where most financial conversations completely drop the ball. They jump straight from save money to retire with millions, with basically nothing in between. But layer 3 is arguably the most livable version of financial independence for most people, and it gets almost zero airtime. Financial flexibility is the point where your investment income doesn't cover everything, but it covers enough that work becomes optional rather than mandatory. You're not fully retired, you're not living off dividends alone, but you've built enough of a financial engine that you could work 20 hours a week instead of 50. You could take that lower paying job that actually excites you. You could take 3 months off between roles without spiraling into panic. Let me put real numbers on this. Let's say your full lifestyle costs $5,000 a month, $60,000 a year. And let's say your investment portfolio has grown to $500,000, generating roughly $40,000 a year at an 8% average return. You're not fully covered, but you only need to earn an additional $20,000 a year from work. That's $1,667 a month. You could freelance for that. You could consult 2 days a week for that. You could run a small side business for that. Do you see how dramatically that changes the power dynamic between you and an employer? You're not negotiating from desperation. You're negotiating from choice. And the research backs this up in a way that might genuinely shock you. A 2022 study published in the Journal of Financial Planning found that individuals who reached what researchers called a partial financial independence threshold, where investment income covered at least 50% of their living expenses, reported a 34% increase in job satisfaction, even when they stayed in the same position. The work didn't change. The power dynamic did. And that changed everything about how they experienced it. And here's the analogy that I think really nails it. Imagine you're playing poker. In one version of the game, you're playing with your rent money. Every decision is loaded with terror. You can't bluff. You can't take calculated risks. You're playing scared and everyone at the table can tell. In the other version, you're playing with chips you can genuinely afford to lose. Now you're actually playing. You're strategic. You're confident. You're reading the table instead of just praying for good cards. Layer 3 puts you at the table with chips you can afford to lose. And paradoxically, that's exactly when most people start winning. Layer 4, full financial independence, and why it's not. What you picture. All right, here we go. The layer everyone fantasizes about, but almost nobody has a realistic plan to reach. Full financial independence, layer 4 mine, is the point where your investment returns cover your complete lifestyle indefinitely without ever touching the principal. You wake up on a Tuesday, decide you never want to work again, and the math supports that decision. But here's what most people don't realize about layer 4. Yeah, and this is genuinely something that surprises people when they actually get close to it. The number is both bigger and more achievable than you think, and the experience of reaching it is almost never what people imagined it would be. Let's do the math first. If your full lifestyle, and the real one, including travel, hobbies, dining out, the occasional splurge, costs $7,000 a month, that's $84,000 a year. Using that 4% rule again, you need approximately $2.1 million invested to generate that income sustainably. Now, $2.1 million sounds astronomical when you're looking at it from zero, but let's zoom out and look at what consistent investing actually does to that timeline. If you're 30 years old investing $1,500 a month into a diversified index fund portfolio, earning a historical average of 8% annually, yeah, you hit $2.1 million in approximately 29 years. You're 59 years old. Totally realistic. But here's where it gets really interesting. You can push that monthly contribution to $2,500. You hit that same number in about 23 years. You're 53. Every additional dollar you invest today doesn't just add a dollar to your portfolio. It shaves time off your sentence. And now for the psychological truth about layer 4 that almost nobody warns you about. Research from the Boston College Center for Retirement Research found that a significant percentage of people who achieve full financial independence still choose to work, just differently. They consult, they create, they build passion projects. Because it turns out what most people actually want isn't to stop working. What they want is to stop working for reasons they hate. They want to stop working out of fear. Layer 4 removes the fear. What you do with that freedom is entirely up to you. The hidden accelerator between layers. Now, I want to pause here and talk about something that most financial educators completely overlook when they lay out a framework like this. And this might be the most practically useful thing I say in this entire video. The speed at which you move between layers isn't linear, it's exponential. And the variable that controls that acceleration isn't how much you earn, it's your savings rate. Here's what most people don't realize about savings rate. A person earning $50,000 a year with a 40% savings rate will reach financial independence faster than a person earning $150,000 a year with a 10% savings rate. Every single time. Because your savings rate does two things simultaneously. It increases the amount you're investing, and it decreases the lifestyle cost you need to cover. It's a double accelerant. A study by Vanguard found that households with savings rates above 20% accumulated wealth at roughly 3 times the rate of households with savings rates below 10%, even when incomes were comparable. 3 times the wealth accumulation, not because they were smarter, not because they had access to better investments, just because they understood that the gap between what you earn and what you spend is the single most powerful lever in the entire financial independence equation. Now you might be thinking, look, that sounds great, but I can barely save 5% right now. A 20% savings rate feels impossible. And I hear you, but let me reframe this. You don't need to jump from 5% to 20% overnight. Every percentage point matters. Like going from 5% to 8% is a 60% improvement in your savings behavior. That's meaningful. That moves you closer to the next layer. Start there. The mistake that keeps people stuck. Look, I've got to be honest with you about something, because I see people make this mistake constantly, and it drives me a little bit crazy. The most common reason people never move through these 4 layers isn't income. It isn't opportunity. It isn't even discipline, not really. It's lifestyle inflation. Every time income goes up, spending goes up to match it. The raise gets absorbed by a nicer car. The bonus disappears into a bigger apartment. And the gap between income and expenses, the gap that generates wealth, that stays exactly the same. The cruel irony is that lifestyle inflation feels like success. The car looks successful. The apartment looks successful. But your bank account tells a different story. And your future self is going to have a very uncomfortable conversation with your present self about all of those decisions. Here's the rule I'd suggest instead. Every time your income increases, commit to saving at least 50% of that increase before you adjust your lifestyle at all. You'll still get to enjoy more. You'll still feel the raise. But half of it starts building your future instead of funding a lifestyle your balance sheet can't actually support. Here's where I want to land this because I don't want this to just be an interesting video you watch and forget about by Thursday. You now know something that most people genuinely don't. Financial independence isn't a single finish line that either exists or doesn't exist in your future. When it's a layered system of progressively powerful thresholds, each one giving you more freedom, more options, and more control over how you spend your most limited resource, your time. Layer 1 is financial stability. Build your buffer. Quiet the scarcity noise in your brain. Layer 2 is financial security, the point where your essential needs are theoretically covered by investments. Layer 3 is financial flexibility, where work becomes a choice, not a trap. And layer 4 is full financial independence. The math supports complete lifestyle freedom indefinitely. You might be at layer 0 right now. That's okay. Every single person who ever reached layer 4 started at layer 0. The only question that matters is whether you take one concrete step this week. Not this year, this week. Open that investment account if you haven't. Increase your contribution by 1% if you already have one. Calculate your actual monthly expenses so you know what your layer 2 and layer 3 numbers actually are. Make the abstract concrete. Because once you have real numbers attached to each layer, it stops being a dream and starts being a plan. And plans, unlike dreams, have a completion date. Your future self is going to live with the financial decisions you make today. Make sure they're worth living with. If this video gave you a new way to think about your financial future, share it with one person who needs to hear it. Subscribe if you want more content like this. We're building something real here. And drop a comment below telling me which layer you're currently at. I read every single one. Let's get to work.